Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra 1, Chapter 9.8 Notes. Today we're talking about solving quadratic and cubic equations by factoring. Our learning target today is to be able to use factoring to solve cubic quadratic equations, if possible. So, the steps for solving by factoring. 1. You need to write the terms in standard form on one side of the equation. The leading coefficient should always be positive. And second is to factor the polynomial if possible. Okay, now, example number 1 to the right. To start off is a harder example, so don't be freaked out, okay? There are easier ones, but we wanted to start off with a very tough one. So, I'm going to draw my lines so we can see both sides of the equation. Okay, now you know it's an equation because what does it have right here? An equal sign. So I want to get my variables on one side, okay? And the leading coefficient is what this says right here. The leading coefficient should be positive, okay? So the leading coefficient would be the x squared. What side would I have to move those to make sure they stay positive? Hopefully you're saying to the left, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract my x squared, and then we're left with 8x squared plus 15x minus 12 equals negative 5x. Now, are all the coefficients to one side? No, they're not. So I have to get rid of the 5x. So I'm going to do the opposite and move it to the other side. Now here's my question. Where does that 5x line up with? Remember, we can only combine things that are the same. So I'm going to line it up with the x. And now we have 8x squared plus 20x minus 12 equals 0. And 0 is what we want. Okay, because now that we have 0, we can factor the polynomial. Okay? So, when we factor the polynomial, that's when we're just looking at this right here. And the first thing we always check is check for a GCF. Okay? And this one does have a GCF. We can divide everything by a 4. So the 4 comes out front. You're left with 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0. Okay? And now you're telling me what A is. A is 2, B is 5, and C is negative 3. I want to multiply 2 times 3, which gives me negative 6. So that's 1 and 6, 2 and 3. So which numbers add up to get to 5, but multiply to get to negative, not negative 3, negative 6. Okay? So what numbers go in here? Well, 1 and 6. Okay, remember it has to work in both situations. So negative 1 plus 6 is 5, and then negative 1 times 6 is negative 6, which was exactly what we were looking for. So now we know how to split the middle term. 2x squared plus 1x, not plus 1x, minus 1x, plus 6x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, we draw the line. I'm going to bring the 4 down to the very bottom. And first group, we can factor out an x. So we've got x, 2x minus 1. Now back here, we can factor out a 3. And then we're left with 2x minus 1. And now our checkpoint, there we go. We did that, right? So we've got x plus 3, 2x minus 1, and remember, all of that still equals 0. You can't forget about that, okay? Now, here's the thing. We're going to set each variable equal to 0 to solve. That has a variable, and that has a variable. Does the 4 have a variable attached to it? No. And now all you got to do is solve the equation. Okay? Some of these you might be able to do in your head. We just want to get the x by itself. So we get x equals negative 3. And then over here, there's just a little more work. We have to add 1 to both sides. Get 2x equals 1. Divide by 2. And you get x equals 1/2. Okay? Wow, a lot of work, huh? It's actually not that bad. All of the problems we're going to be doing are actually examples that you have in your homework from last night. So, set the following cubic and quadratic equations by factoring. Remember to always check for GCF first. So, we have a quadratic binomial. So the first thing we always do is check to see, is there GCF? And here there is. We can take out a 3. The 3 comes out front. We're left with x squared minus 4. And this is actually what we learned the other day. Is it a quadratic binomial? Yes. Is it subtraction? Yes. Can I square root both numbers? Yeah. Okay, so the 3 comes out front, and we're left with x. One's a positive, one's a negative, and the square root of 4 is 2. I'm going to set each one of these equal to 0. So x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. And when you solve that, you should get x minus 2 and x equals positive 2. Okay? Now, the key thing is, we're doing this because there's an equal sign. We want to know, what does x actually equal? And that's why we're able to solve all of this. Okay? Here's example number 3. Okay? Now, is there a GCF? There isn't. So, I want to know, what is A? Well, A is 1, B is 13, and C is 36. Now, this is all the stuff that you should be able to do. Okay? So, we want the factors of 36, and when you're done, we want the numbers that add up to get to 13 and multiply to get to 36. So, I want you to go ahead and go through all the way and factor this, and when you come back up, the answers will be up. Good luck. Okay, after you factor it, you should have gotten to this point right here. So w plus 9, it's actually, I was writing that really fast. So 9 and w plus 4 equals 0. So from here, we've got 2 parts. We're going to split it up. W plus 9 equals 0, and w plus 4 equals 0. And when you solve those, you get w equals negative 9, and w equals -4. Those are my two answers. Okay? Now, here's a little hint. Okay? Whatever the highest exponent is, that's how many answers we have. Okay? Whoa, what happened there? So, my highest exponent was 2. We had 2 answers. My highest exponent was 2. Once again, we had 2 answers. So on this next one, my highest exponent is 3. We're going to have 3 answers here. Okay? So remember, the first thing you always want to check, is there a GCF? Okay? And there is. Each term has an M. Okay? So at least I should be taking out an M. But in this case, we can also take out a 2. Okay? So the 2m comes out front. We're left with m squared minus m minus 20 equals 0. Okay? So a equals 1, b equals -1, and c equals -20. I want the factors of -20, numbers that add up to get to -1, and multiply to get me -20. Okay? So I'm going to do the same thing as last time. We're going to pause the video right here. You guys are going to go through and factor everything completely, and then I'll help you solve at the end. Okay? Okay, so after you factor that, you should have gotten 2m, m plus 4, and m minus 5. Okay, so now everything that has a variable, you need to set equal to 0. Remember how we said our highest exponent was 3? That means we were going to have 3 answers. Okay, so we're going to set the 2m equal to 0, the m minus 5 equal to 0, and the m plus 4 equal to 0. Okay, so each one of those, there's something that you have to do to solve. Okay, and when you finish that up, you should get m equals 0, m equals 5, and m equals -4. Okay, now number 5, you guys are all on your own. Okay, the entire thing. So go ahead and pause the video, try it, and I'm just going to have the answer up when you come back. Okay. Okay, those should have been the 2 answers. Now, if you used a calculator, since this is a nice decimal, you could have said n equals -1.5. Okay, either one's acceptable. Okay, let's spend some time on these hard ones right now. So, we need to look at the leading coefficients. They need to be positive. Okay, so if I'm going to move one of them to make sure it stays positive, which one should I move? It should be the 3w squared. Okay, so if I'm moving the 3w squared, this whole side should cancel out. So if I'm going to cancel that whole side out, I also need to move the 6w, so those cancel out, and I also need to move the 42. So when we simplify this, our equation is going to be left with 2w squared. Well, those cancel out. Minus 72 equals 0. And that's what we want. And now it's just like all the other equations that we've done so far. Okay, we want to see to check if we can take out a GCF, which we can. And we're left with w squared minus 36 equals to 0. Okay, it's squared, which means we're going to have two answers. It's the difference of two squares. So that's w plus 6, w minus 6 equals to 0. Everything with the variable we set equal to 0. So w plus 6 equals 0, w minus 6 equals 0. And after we solve, we get w equals negative 6, and w equals positive 6. Okay, number 7. I'm going to pause the video and see if you guys can do this thing all on your own, okay? Good luck. Okay, there's the first step. How'd you guys do? If you need to correct it, go ahead. The next step to do is you should be taking out a GCF. And here's your little hint. How many answers should you have? All right, go ahead and pause the video again. Okay, and there are the answers. Now, if you had trouble with this or you need extra assistance, please come see Ms. Carranza or myself. Otherwise, that's it for Algebra 1, Chapter 9.8 notes. Thanks for watching.